we need to reimagine change itself, or we are condemned to repeat all our errors. The future is where the imagination meets change. Okay, so now your one or two sentences about the future of education.
So what I'm the most excited about is definitely like gamified and tokenized educational ecosystems. Where imagine like you can have like an AR, like augmented reality kind of world where like you can like just navigate this world and like go on little missions and then having those missions being validated and then being recorded on the blockchain, and your certificate can be emitted in this like AR world. And this is it, right? You don't need anything else, because then there will be a proof forever in the blockchain that you did that and that you won the game, and then you will have learned, you had fun, and you don't need anything else. So I think educational and tokenized ecosystems are quite exciting.
I imagine that in the future there's a system which is very much if I need to learn something or if I'm ready to teach something, it just sort of automatically, a little thing pops up and says, hey, the system has found 10 people who are really interested in learning about, well, say, agriculture for blockchain could be. And it looks like you've got some time right now. Would you like to do it? And it just happens. It happens, think about magic or think of something like the Harry Potter, the room of requirement, where the ability to bring people together, to bring people, a lot of people love to teach, but it's just the coordination problem, finding how and when and who is really quite difficult. And slightly into the future, it can become effortless, both for people who are doing it voluntarily and for fun, and then most importantly, for kids and adults who really need to learn something right now, and they are able to get the best available version of that right now.
I imagine a world where students can own their credentials. In India, 45% of medical degrees are fake. That's a scary thought. This is an extremely scary thought, especially when you talk about medical degrees. A few of them have gone over into developed nations like the US and the UK and are practicing right now. It's such a simple way to be fixed, and blockchain is the perfect example of how you could certify and verify credentials on blockchain. It makes sense, and it needs to happen. It needs to happen fast.
Well, join me in giving a round of applause for this panel, and then we'll have a Q&A. Thank you, great. Okay, so we'll have maybe 5-10 minutes for Q&A, and then we'll get set up.
Hi, I was going to ask you about services like Brilliant.org. There's a whole bunch of services that actually allow for peer-to-peer learning and knowledge management. And you talked a lot about how self-paced and personalized is the key for learning to occur in the new age. Can you talk a little bit about why we think blockchain is a technology that will make that happen versus centralized services, which also have an advantage? And why you think other services like Brilliant.org are not the way to go, but it has to be blockchain-based?
Specifically talk to all of us?
I guess we can all say something, right? But like, I mean, just like, if you come back to the basics of what blockchain is, like really it allows you, again, like to get rid of a middleman, and it can replace trust, it brings transparency, it brings immutability, meaning that once it's being put on a block, and you can't change it anymore. It's like a timestamp. On that date, you got that, this is it. So that's really where the key, where a centralized platform, like I don't know, like Udemy can be corrupted, and that comes down to the corruption problems, even like from an economic point of view, but also just from a like administrative point of view, where you create a certificate, and then you know that it was not corrupted, at the exception that like the oracle and like the guy who put the data on the blockchain was not corrupted. But then that's another problem too.
I think Khan Academy has been coming up on around 10 years of being around, and I think they've done pretty good penetration in the US markets. And if you look at the India market, they tried very, very hard to penetrate the market, and it was free. The biggest Edtech company in India is called Byju's, and it is essentially doing what Khan Academy was offering for free. But what they knew the market really, really well. They knew what students needed. They knew what was going to make it lucrative for them to buy. What's amazing about Byju's is that 80% of their students that are purchasing it are from like tier 4, tier 5 cities. These are, in India, those are smaller cities. They're not coming from the big metropolitan cities. These are cities that are being underserved. I think a blockchain company can come in similar to Byju's and hopefully bring a little more credibility and transparency to the whole atmosphere of the technology.
I think there's a place where, you know, call it centralized, call it people working together, people learning together is very valuable. And while that's happening, there can simultaneously be in the background blockchain or other tools for being able to get the results from that learning out. Because you learned from this teacher, okay, the teacher needs to be able to certify that the students learned and have that in a place where the student is able to keep that information. Again, it's not centralized. So that's sort of the record-keeping side of it. But again, if for whatever reason the person can't go into that situation, you're working 2 jobs, you can't go in when the class is happening, are there ways to be able to make it really easy to do that sometimes, but other times you're looking at video or you're not able to go together again. So again, it's that, you know, the record keeping, it's a coordination problem, and blockchain or blockchain plus AI plus neurotech to be able to see how people learn. It's a mix and match of these which are going to give new solutions which will give perhaps the same results, but is going to give the same results to a larger group of people and at the same time give better results to different smaller groups of people.
So I'd like to get your thoughts on the negative side of immutable records. That while it's one thing to put a degree credential on the blockchain, if you start putting academic records on the blockchain and you're seeing things like 504 plans and IEPs put on chain, then you're essentially stigmatizing somebody. And I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think this is coming down to, you know, security and privacy issues, and so when it comes to blockchain or any other newish technology, you want to, you know, when I am mentoring startups on their board, you know, I have one of my big rules is, you know, A, sleep enough, but B, before you do any major launches, have you brought people together who don't work for you and just ask them, hey, what could go wrong here? And the larger the issue, the more that might affect people. You need to bring in, for example, people from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, people who, you know, an organization which has been around for 25 years plus, and they have seen already all the ways in which really well-meaning people thought that what they were going to do was just not going to have any problem whatsoever, and then they build something which, for example, accidentally breaks the Fourth Amendment. So when it comes to this, before people launch, before, you know, you might have some people saying, oh, everything goes up there. No, you need to have that conversation, and you need to be able to prove that you've had that conversation of, you brought people together. You talked about what are all the ways in which this could go wrong. You've addressed that, and you've addressed it before you launched. So yeah, this is not a blockchain-specific issue. This is a startups in general, technology companies in general, people in general, not talking through the consequences when those consequences can be easily known if you get a large enough group of stakeholders together.
I think one more question here.
So building on that, you know, like there's this issue that, you know, the people who build it first are going to control, you know, the potential, the language that information gets disseminated on, the kind of content that gets shared around the world, and exposing that. And there's a difference of like, how do we take care of cultural sensitivity, language sensitivity, things that, you know, like people might not even know that that's actually what they should be curious about. You know, we talked about personalization, so it's like, how does, you know, like somebody who's building for, you know, an education that's, hey, I want to share education with around the world or go to different countries and share access to education, how should they make sure that, you know, they're actually paying attention to what the needs are of the people and adjusting that while they're building that technology?
Just real quick, I will quickly take a stab at this. In my experience in education, if a company started in Nairobi, Kenya, and they go to India or they go to other else, they're terrible. They really suck at it, and it takes them a few years before they figure it out. And so I honestly do not believe that there's a solve-all answer that can solve all the problems for every country in education. I think it's much more micro-focused, is my opinion.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And the thing is that blockchain is just like a database that like the creators can put and make available for then content creators or like teachers or like, I mean, or non-teachers, but like people trying to replace teachers to create like those systems. But then I think like it should still just be like a database layer where like people who are from that area should create their own content. Because it's true, like to be honest, like cultural sensitivity is so huge, and even when you go from the East Coast to the West Coast, there are some differences. So even when you go to Africa, like they are still like organized somehow in like vestige of tribes, and like each tribe in Africa have their own culture and their own way to teach. So like I think like technology is just a tool, and then like it's up to like the locals to create their own content and that. But that's my take on that.
No, I think, again, blockchain, it's a tool, as you're just saying. It's an amazing tool. It's a tool that gives us a set of capabilities. And I think it's a failure mode of a lot of smart people in general, or people in startups that you think, oh, I've built this tool, I've built this thing, here's what I think it's going to, here's the best thing for it to be used for, here's what it can do. And yeah, people will come with some interesting ideas, but especially in cases of education, in areas where people, they don't want to be the experiments, right? Nobody wants their kids to be, here's an experiment, it might turn out really badly. No, you don't want that. So instead you start saying, okay, how do you bring together the people who really understand the problem, they understand the why, and then the purpose of, the people building the technology is to be helping them use this tool, but also to be in a position where, hey, if my tool doesn't work, maybe blockchain is really not applicable at all. Here's another set of new technologies, including the ones, there's like the sexy exponential technologies, but the mundane exponential technologies, the ability to connect with people, the ability to be able to have translation, so that slightly into the future to be able to connect with people who've already solved the problem 10,000 kilometers away, and their solution isn't necessarily going to be what works for you, but if you talk to them, you can learn the process and how they did that. So it's a tool. It's one of many tools. It's again, when you start thinking it not in terms of how people are using it today, but if you have a decentralized, if you have the information available in small little bits, a bit like just having a database that anybody can come in and mix and match the information with, then you can start thinking of creative new solutions. But the solutions have to come from the people who understand the problem, and not just the people who are building the tool for the tool's sake. Nothing wrong with that, I've done that myself. But you have to work together.
Yeah, and to build on that, if you think of like that quote, like think global, act local, I would say like blockchain actually is a global tool, but to allow you to be more local and to have more globalizations and create like micro ecosystems. But that goes for like currencies, like community currencies, microeconomies. It just allows people to tailor-made their own system with their own token and with their own ledger, whatever.
And I do think you have to worry about, say people when talking about nanodegrees, and we'll help you learn even faster, and you're going to have to be able to run so hard to be able to catch up. And at some point it's like, wait, let's back off, and as a group, the stakeholders have a conversation about, is this where we want to be? Because these same technologies, when you think about blockchain for financial systems, blockchain for democratic systems, we can start saying, well, wait, you can use the tool to be able to do a better version of a faster version of what we've already got. You can also use these tools for being able to say, let's say there's alternatives to the system overall, and start saying, like, what could we build if everything was up for question and everything was up for rebuilding? So yeah, blockchain, it's both a local solution, but it's also a solution for being able to talk about how do you find solutions.
Okay. All right, let's give one last round of applause. And then, if you have more questions, we'll have another Q&A after the demo. And Josh, are you? Okay.
So you guys can, that's everything great
Go grab a drink. You can refer to your cards for 5 more minutes, and then we'll meet back together.
Instead of